Well, hello everyone and welcome back to another digest. This time, I'm going to be talking about all the things I finished in July to September of 2025, because, it's been a while, it's been a few months, I've been slacking on this digest. I guess technically part one, because I'm going to be splitting this into multiple parts, because it's going to take me way too long to record, so here we are. But let's just get right into it, so it doesn't take any longer than it has to. The first thing we have to talk about is Squid Game Season 3. So this goes all the way back, personally it's a TV show, it's 6 episodes, I'm sure you've heard of it, but it goes all the way back to the 1st of July. So, I don't really remember this that well, but at least I wrote some notes about it. But this is the final season of Squid Game. For context, if you don't watch all the previous digests, season 2 of Squid Game also, I think, came out this year. And I really like that. I think I like that even better than season 1. And season 3 was an utter disappointment. I actually did not really like this much at all. It's a 2 out of 5. It's impressively a step down in basically every regard. I think Squid Game, to me, and I talked about this when I was doing my season 2 review, to me, I think it excels when it focuses on the games and focuses on the building character relationships and just characters in general, so that when it comes to the games, there's interesting dynamics at play. Like one of the most interesting games in season 2 was the game where it's like I don't know what you call it, it's like the merry-go-round game or whatever, where people they shout a number and you have to like pick that number of people to be in your group so that you can find a room, and if you make it to the room in time, then you're safe or whatever. That's really interesting because it like combines all these different dynamics of like what if you have a group of 4 and then like the number's like 3 and you have to like choose someone to kick out, like who do you kick out, and it like adds drama and it's like really interesting. This season it had none of that. The games were really boring. The character stuff to me was pretty boring. Yeah, that was a big disappointment basically. But let me see what I actually wrote. So overall thoughts, not good, massive step down. Oh yeah, I didn't even watch reaction videos to this, which is pretty crazy if you know me. Usually any show I watch reaction videos to it later. I'll see what people thought about it. Like I'll watch Blind Wave at least. But this time I was like, there's just nothing to watch like react worthy. There's no moments where I'm like, oh, I'm looking forward to seeing people react to this. And if anything, I'd be like annoyed at people like praising it or being like, oh, it's so good and entertaining if I didn't like it. So I don't know, it was just didn't watch reactions. Anyway, yeah, next point, the games were bad. Hide and seek was like one of the main games in this. There might have been like, it was at least 1 episode, but it might have been 2 episodes. Firstly, it was like kind of boring. And secondly, it wasn't even hide and seek. It was like tag in a hallway and with like rooms, and there's no hiding because someone's just gonna like find you eventually because you don't really have anywhere to hide. It's just in random rooms. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't like that one. It was kind of boring. There's a jump rope game, which was like artificially made to seem harder than it would be in reality. Like, it went on for so long. Like the idea is that this is a giant jump rope that's like spinning around, and like every time it like comes down, you have to jump, otherwise you get knocked off like the floating platform and die. But they make it look so hard, and it's like the length you have to travel is like so short, and if you just sprinted, you'd be done so quick. It was just a whole like, I don't know. I think it was so boring, I guess, is another thing to say. The hide and seek game was boring. The jump rope game is boring. Then there's one more game, which is the final game, and that was actually fine. The gist of the game was that you've got, I don't even remember what it was. You've got like there's like a number of people on the platform, and you have to like press the button, and then you have to choose to get someone off, I think. And if you like throw someone off, then you can proceed or something like that. That was like the gist of it, which is like a fine game. It's like kind of fun, but like, it's just like, it got frustrating at the end where all the characters were kind of like attacking each other, and they were like, 4, 5, 6 had this big like moral compass about like how he's not going to let MG Coin take his kid because MG Coin is like an evil guy, and because of that like everyone dies in the end except for the baby. It was like weird, and I just didn't enjoy it. Like the character dynamics just didn't entertain me at all. I don't know, it was just bad. But the games were boring, dynamics were bad. I don't know what to say. That's all the negatives, which is me just basically saying bad, but there's 2 things I liked in this, which is 2 scenes in particular. One of them is the end of the hide and seek game, where you have MG Coin basically killing the trans girl. I thought that was like a surprising, like, oh wow, I can't believe this is happening. What a tragic tale of like, we have this protagonist who we're following because he's trying to like save his girlfriend who's pregnant. And then we have this other protagonist who's like an all around stand-up person who's saved all the people in her group and like previously. And it's like a really, like, we love her. She's great. And she's like fighting to protect the same girl as the MG Queen, and they clash, and the MG Queen kills her, and it's like, oh, it's so tragic. That was good. And the other thing that happens is also at the end of the hide and seek game, which is that the old mother has to kill her son, and I was like, oh, that's like, in order to protect the babies, I guess the point there. But it was, emotionally, I got it. It was good. There's 2 good moments in this otherwise not very good season. But there's one more overall thought to point out, which is that the VIPs show up again in this season. And it was an absolute mindfuck for me, like when I was watching. Because it's like, firstly, it's like the beginning of the next episode. So I click the next episode, I play it, and they take their masks off. And there's this like this random white guy in this like Korean show. And I'm like, what is this? Where's this coming from? Was it like, am I watching the right show? Like, was this like, because I know there's like a reality, like a real life Squid Game thing that Netflix did. For a second, I thought I'd click that. And he's like talking in English, and I'm like, what's going on here? And then like the other people are talking in English, and I'm like, did I like click the dub? And I changed the audio setting, and I'm not watching the dub. And then I realized they're the VIPs. And it's like weird. It's like, I don't know if they must have like overdubbed their voices or something, because the acting is really weird. It doesn't match up with the voices, and I don't know. It was, anyway, the VIPs were really strange and the acting was really bad. But I guess what else is new? There were also bad actors in season 1, but in this one particularly, they were noticeably bad and it was very jarring. But anyway, that's all I really have to say for overall thoughts. Like, it was just not good. But it's not a 1 out of 5, you know. I wasn't like too bored watching it, but there was really nothing too good in it. But now I have a bunch of miscellaneous notes. Let me see. The first thing is that I've seen The Acolyte since I watched Squid Game, and it is crazy how different 456 is. I don't know his name, the actor's name, but how like different he is to Master Soul in The Acolyte. So he's a good actor, you know. He does a very good job of portraying 2 different characters completely differently. What else is there? It's interesting. Oh, something that happens in this season is that 456 gets mad at one of his teammates from last season, who basically was a coward and came back and didn't take the guns to where he needed to go. And this whole season, like when he's getting mad at him, I assume anyone watching, and I especially, was like expecting a subversion where it's like, you expect that he's going to get mad and eventually he's actually not actually mad or something, and they'll confront each other and he'll just be like, I'm disappointed in you. But no, he was legitimately mad and he wanted to kill him. It was crazy. It was like an anti-subversion subversion, because you were like, oh, almost certainly, like any story, this would be a subversion. But in this one, we're just playing it straight, and he actually just hates him, wants to kill him. And I'm like, okay, that was interesting. What is there? Hide and seek is bad, just a tag thing. I'm assuming the baby had to be CGI. I thought it was really good CGI. I didn't even tell that it was CGI. I had a crazy revelation during watching this that like North Korea is north of South Korea. I don't know why. In my mind, for some reason, North Korea was like an island that was like below South Korea. Well, technically the same island or whatever, but the bottom half for some reason. I don't know why. I liked it in the hide and seek game. The old guy with the booming voice, who was like a CEO or something, or had like billions and billions of debt, like the most debt out of anyone. I liked how he was like really scared, because like all the people, he had a bunch of enemies basically. And this was a game where the more enemies you have, the more like likely you are to die. So I thought that was cool. What is there? One good thing that season 2 did was that it made the frontman a character, like one of the Squid Game participants, which very much added to any of the scenes that he had in this season, because it's like we know him a lot better, and we saw him like kind of, you know, during the fun times when he was cheering during that relay race, and during the bad times, you know, at the end when he's like betraying 456 and all that. Like we know him as a character much better. So whenever he shows up here, I'm like, oh, I'm emotionally invested in this guy a little bit. So it's cool. Cool plot twist that the Squid Game people located and found out that so we find out that throughout this season and last season, I think as well, we're following one of the what do you call them? The employees, the actual shape people. And her motivation is that she wants to basically find her daughter, who's like, I think she ran away from North Korea, and I think her daughter like got left behind or something. And the revelation is that the Squid Game organization knows where her daughter was. And it makes perfect sense, because the Squid Game organization is like all powerful and like basically has all this knowledge about all the participants, and you assumably would think all the employees too, and it turns out they do. And it was kind of a cool, like, oh, that's an interesting way to actually get conclusive, like a conclusion to an actual storyline, you know? It was really cool. I like the tragedy that if only... Oh, the story, like, the season ends tragically where 456 dies, but, like, if he only had waited a little bit more, then he probably would have survived, you know? It's, like, a little tragic, but, yeah. And one of the final thing to say about this, the nice thing to say about the season as a whole, is the wrap-up was nice. You have the dad who had a daughter who had cancer, like, he survives. You have the money-lending guy who we followed this whole season, he, like, gets out of jail. And you get 456's daughter, who gets money from the front man, who is now defeated, you know, his ideology was defeated. So yeah, it was good, but it was also overwhelmingly bad. So it's 2 out of 5. But that was Squid Game. Next up, we have The Hollow, which is a TV show. It's 10 episodes long, and I watched it on the 18th I finished it on the 18th of July. Now, I have absolutely no idea how popular this show is. So maybe no one has heard this, or maybe literally everyone here has heard it. But just to give some context, so it's the story of this show is that these 3 people, oh, can I remember the names? Kai, I know. Mira, I know. Adam, I was going to say Dan, but Adam. These 3 characters wake up in like a underground like thing, and they have to like escape the place, and they like climb the walls, and they use a computer to get... There's like a bunch of stuff, and they ending up in this hollow place, which is like a forest thing. I don't know, you know what a hollow is if you don't Google it. And the show is like a mystery of trying to figure out like where were they? Why did they wake up in this room? How do they get out of here? Like what's happening basically. But it's like a supernatural fantasy, not fantasy, but I guess kind of fantasy sci-fi kind of thing. And overall, it's a 3 out of 5. It's generally a chill, kind of fun, episodic kind of story where there's like a general overarching mystery, which has like a really interesting conclusion, which I'm going to talk about. But overall, it's like not too interesting. It's like fine. Episode by episode is basically you're going to a new location and you have like a new gimmick that episode of like what you're going to be doing. Like one of the episodes, they're like fighting this ice monster thing. One of them, they're at an amusement park with like two twins, or I don't know if they're twins, two brothers, I guess, and one's giant and one's small. Like you have stuff like that. To me, it kind of feels like each episode is like an escape room where it's like, oh, there's like a way to get out of the place and you kind of need to figure out that way. And whenever they figure it out, it's always like, oh, that was like kind of interesting. So I think it's almost the definition of like a 3 out of 5. It's like perfectly, it was fine. I enjoyed it. But the crazy thing in this is absolutely the conclusion, which is saved until like last like 10 minutes of the show or something, which is that this is an animated show, of course, like it's, a animated Netflix series or whatever. And the revelation is that when they like beat the final escape room thing, they escape into the real world and you find out that this whole thing was a game and they're in a competition with like another team. Like I said, also, I didn't mention this, but throughout the whole show, it's these three are like trying to escape, but at the same time, there's also 3 other people who seemingly also don't know what's happening, but they also were trying to escape, but they're like kind of enemies at the same point. And I think they kind of like remember it or have pieced it together, but these 3, our main characters, haven't. And at the end of the show, you find out that they're literally in real life, like real action, live action footage. You see the 2 teams are like fighting each other in like a game so that they can win this competition in real life. And it's like, I can't believe this. Like I never saw this coming. And it's a wild thing where it's also just wild in terms of like, you see the characters that were animated, but they're like real people now and they kind of look like the people who were the actors and they sound exactly like them. And obviously because they cast the actors first and they must have designed the animated models later. It's just a wild feeling. And I know there is a season 2 to this, so maybe I'll watch that one day. And I'm curious, is it going to be like live action or animated? I assume it would be animated, but yeah, it's kind of wild. But yeah, now let me see what other notes I have, if anything. I have 2 more notes, 2 very small ones. One is that not a really big fan of the art style. I think it looks kind of ugly. It's like perfectly passable. Like it's not the ugliest thing I've ever seen, but it's just not very pleasant, I don't think. And the vibe of the show, which I think is in part like due to the soundtrack, which I cannot tell you a single track in this, but the vibe that the soundtrack establishes, or like I don't know, maybe just everything, the vibe, whatever, is interesting. Like I like it. It's kind of like mysterious. It's kind of like, not fantasy is not the right word. There's like another word I'm looking for, like where you got like creatures and spooky things and stuff like that, and like interesting new worlds, and I like the vibe. Interesting show. But that's really all I have to say about The Hollow season 1. So who knows? Stay tuned. Maybe I'll watch another season later. But next up, we have a rewatch, which is Heavenly Delusion. It's an anime, 13 episodes, and I watched it on the 18th of July. I finished it on my 18th of July. So this is my 3rd watch through of Heavenly Delusion. Last time was, I think, two digests ago in 2023, maybe 2024, where I watched it and then I really liked it. It became my favorite like anime, basically. And then I watched it again like a week after. This time I was watching it with a friend. I was showing her. And so this is why I rewatched it this time. And to be honest, I don't have too much to say. It's a 5 out of 5. It's still a really, really, really fantastic show. I have a few mind notes to talk about. One is the directing is absolutely the highlight, I think. I might have also said this last time, but there's so many just interesting shots, and even like the action is like interestingly directed. Everything is just, it looks good. It's a good looking show. Another thing to say is that the big emotional scene with Dr. Usumi and Mimihime obviously just it lands harder like every time I see it. Like the more you appreciate the characters in the story and know like Mimihime and Shiro when they're younger, like the more times you see the show, the more it hits, where it's like the reveal where he's like, or where Mimihime is like, thank you for giving me your eye. And it's like, oh my God, he gave his eye. And it's very good. And the last note, I really don't have much to say on Heavenly Delusion, but the last thing I have to say is that the music is absolutely fantastic. And I have like one song that I liked a lot more this time around than I ever like remember it last time, which is the song called Tragedy. So this is like the one, I don't know if it's the one, there's probably multiple, but it's one of the big sad songs they use whenever something sad is happening or tragic is happening on screen. And I don't know how to describe it. It's not the one, it's not the insert song or whatever from the Dr. Usame Mimihime thing. It's just another one. The example I remember it, like where it first got to me and I was like, oh, this is like a really good one, is when Tokyo's friend is dying in hospital. I don't remember what their name was, but basically it's played during that scene, like early on, like episode 2 or 3 or something like that. It's really impactful. And I think I did realize, like I thought about it a little bit, and I think the composer, Kensuke Ushio, who does this, who also does Chainsaw Man, they obviously do Heavenly Illusion, they do Words Bubble Up Like Soda Pop, which I watched the other day, Devilman Crybaby, which I hope to watch one day, Silent Voice, Orb, like there's a bunch of really good shows they do. I think they have to be my favorite composer. Like especially Chainsaw Man is one of my favorite soundtracks ever. Heavenly Delusion is also one of my favorite soundtracks ever. So it's really impressive. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out there, Heavenly Delusion, great music. But yeah, to be honest, I don't really have anything else to say. If you haven't seen Heavenly Delusion, you should absolutely go watch it. I don't know why you're watching this if you haven't, but yeah. All right, next up, we have Love and Pop. So this is a movie from 1998. It's an hour and 50 minutes long, and I watched it on the 18th of July. So for context, this is a movie where I discussed it with Kyle Entertainment. So if you go to the secondary ENT channel, which is Kyle Entertainment's second channel, you can see my full discussion for this with Kyle for many, many hours. I don't know how many. I'll link it in the description, so check that out. But just to give a general gist of it, 4 out of 5. So this is a movie where I didn't appreciate it initially when I was watching through it, but even just like hours after I finished watching it and like the day after, it really like went up in my appreciation for it. And I don't really have a strong reason why. I guess it just like resonated more. Like, oh, like I kind of appreciated how like the pacing and the character, like there was basically elements of this that I appreciated over time. But let me see, what were my actual notes? So I think one thing is just to also say, I'm going to talk about 2 movies now. I'm going to talk about Love and Pop, and I'm also going to talk about Ritual next, which is like another thing in my 2-part discussion I did with Kyle. This was the first half of it. Both of those movies, I was very bad at following the plot. And I think it was probably because I was tired or like watching them pretty quickly or something like that. So there's going to be a lot of moments in this where I'm like, I don't really remember the story that well, but I remember the impression the movie left on me. And it is a very positive one that has kind of gone up over time. So I am interested in rewatching this basically. But the point is that I really like this movie a lot, and it's mainly because of the vibe. Now, the vibe is really hard to quantify, obviously, but it's a combination of a bunch of stuff. One is that it feels incredibly grounded. Like the directorial style is, firstly, it's like obviously a very like cheap, or I don't know if it's cheap, it might be really expensive, but it's a very low quality camera. It's like a lot of like I feel like it was a lot of first person footage, or like not first person, but like really grounded kind of footage, which is like following people in their day-to-day lives. The settings feel very real. Like it's an incredibly grounded movie, basically. And I think it's like mostly due to the directing, which I like a lot. And that like contributes to the vibe. It's very slow paced. It's like very simple in its plot and plot progression, not just plot, but like how it moves, and just like you're just basically following these girls as they like live their lives with like some loose goal, but it's like not really that relevant, but it kind of is, but it's also not. The scenes are like despite the pacing of the movie being slow, the scenes themselves are also quite slow sometimes as well. And like I remember this one scene where they're all like hugging in front of an ATM or something like that, and it just lasts so long, and it's like it just makes it grounded and real and gives this like certain vibe that I can't quite quantify. Yeah, I like it a lot. And I wrote in my notes that it reminds me of 2 movies. One of them is One Cut of the Dead, which I've talked about, I think, last month's digest, which has a similar vibe to this, especially the latter half of like One Cut of the Dead. It kind of feels like, I just don't know how to, I wish I could explain this. Like, it's just the vibe. It has a similar vibe. And the other one is Yi Yi, which is one of my favorite movies of all time as well. Yeah, which also has a kind of similar vibe to this. I think it might be. Yi Yi, I think I can see a much more clearer thing in relation to this, which is that they're both basically slice of life movies where you're following a character throughout their day as they kind of have like events that are like pretty, you can imagine happening in like real life, you know? They're not like too exaggerated. They're just like people living life, I guess. And I really do appreciate that in movies. So this was a little bit like that, you know? But anyway, I only have one more note that I kind of want to talk about here, because if you want to know more detailed thoughts, go watch the discussion with Kyle. But one thing is that I really, really like the ending scene. And this is something that I talked about with Kyle as well, which is basically this whole movie is basically this girl. I don't remember how old she is. I think she's like a teenager or something. And she basically, on her pursuit of trying to get enough money to buy a ring, she basically lands herself in a very bad situation where she's like naked in a shower, and like in the corner of a shower as this man is like harassing her and might like rape her or something. You know, it's like a crazy situation she's in. And then she goes home to her family after this. And the family is like very wholesome and kind of like the dad is like playing with a model train kit, and like the mom is just like happy. And it's like, she returns home to these people who are like very kind and nice and just normal, and obviously deeply care about her. And it's like a very stark contrast between like the life that she was living as a person going on her own, like doing her own thing in the real world, and the life that she has when she goes back to her family. And it's a very relatable or like very like real kind of feeling of like and not to this extreme where you're like, oh my God, I'm sitting in the shower, I'm about to get raped, whatever, like that kind of thing. But like where you live your life, like you go out, obviously you grow up with your family, you live with them for whatever, 20, 30 years or a long time, you know, maybe for some people 30 years, long time, okay? And then you go and you live your life after that a little bit, you know? And you like your life outside of that. It's very different, you know? You get to be your own person, you get to be in these crazy situations, which you never would have been with the safety of your family and all that. And then one day you go back to your family, and it's like, you don't like it as much as the life that you had. It's not as fun. It's not as interesting. They don't really like kind of get you the same way that your friends do, or the people that you like kind of go and experience life with do. But there's like a comfort to it where it's like, this is like, this used to be my life, and I know these people are kind, nice people who will always look after me. And it's like, it like the movie does a very good job of like portraying that kind of feeling of like adulthood versus like returning to your home as an adult, even though the girl herself isn't an adult, right? I'm pretty sure she is just a teenager, but it kind of gives that feeling, like the transition of like, I guess the movie kind of works because it is like she is on the transition of it. She's becoming older, like she's getting her independence, even though she's not ready to have it yet. It's an interesting feeling. I don't quite know how to explain it, but I hope you get what I'm trying to say. But that's the main, that's all I really have to say about Love and Pop. So go check it out, if you're interested. An interesting movie. Next up, we have Ritual, which I briefly mentioned just then. So it's a movie from 2000, directed by the same director as the last movie, Hideaki Anno. Hideaki Anno, I think that's how you say it. It's 2 hours and 8 minutes long, and I watched it on the 19th of July. So again, if you want to check out my full discussion of this, go to the secondary NT channel, which is me and Kyle Entertainment, second channel, where we discuss this at length. And again, I just want to preface this the same way I preface Love and Pop, which is that I barely remember the plot of this. First, it was a long time ago, and secondly, I don't think I ever really understood the plot of this very well. And this, more so than Love and Pop, I really didn't understand this that well. But there were a few things I did. But overall, it's a 3 out of 5. So I just want to say there's like 4 things. I just look at my notes now. 4 things I liked, and then 1 thing I want to say that I didn't like. Obviously, actually, let me just start with the 1 thing I didn't like, which is that I just didn't understand the plot. Okay, very clear. The 4 things I liked. One of them is the directing. This is very different to Love and Pop, where Love and Pop felt like a very grounded, low budget kind of feel. This feels like very like prestigious, like very like high art, like film kind of directorial style. I like it. Now, there's not any specific like thing I want to point out. Not that I could even recall any at this point, but it's cool. I like it. Like the use of lighting, the use of shots, even the use of like narration. I remember there's like a narrator in this who's like narrating events, and I don't mean like an omniscient narrator, but like the 2 characters I think are like narrating at different points. It's cool. I like it. The directing stuff. I also like the main woman. She's here on the left, on the right of the screen. She's an interesting character where clearly she's putting on an act. Like she kind of comes across as insane, but she's obviously not very insane. She's just deeply mentally destroyed about something, which I don't actually remember what it was, but I think it's something to do with her mother basically abandoning her or something. But it's interesting to see someone who's acting crazy because they want to like deny their suicidality or don't want to show it. Like don't want to show their depression, rather they prefer to act straight crazy, I guess. And I thought that was interesting. The third thing is that there's this really cool scene where she's like getting very frustrated and like hating herself, and she's like, he hates me, she hates me, I'll be left alone, they left me. I was like, this is very real and relatable, and I like that. Breaking down and just like talking to yourself and yelling, and not yelling, but like kind of saying the same phrase over and over again. Like, it was really cool. And then finally, I guess I do have one directing thing I want to point out, because the final like interesting good thing I want to say about this movie is this final scene here, this final shot was really cool. It's like a really wide shot where you're kind of positioned to be like the guy in the scene who's looking at the 2, who's like the main guy in the movie, the main man. And it's like a really long shot where you can't actually look at both characters at the same time. And it's like hard to you have to kind of look back and forth to see how they're reacting. You can't really see both their reactions in detail at like the same time. I liked it. It was kind of interesting. And yeah, to be honest, that's really all I have to say about Ritual. 3 out of 5, I liked it quite a bit. Next up, we have Project Zomboid. So this is a game. I played it for 31 hours, and I finished it on the 20th of July. So this is a game where I played multiplayer, so it was me and 3 other friends, and if for some reason you've never heard of Project Zomboid, which is very possible, it's not that popular, it's a zombie game. So what you have to do is that it's like I don't know how you describe it, it's like a top-down view of like a grid-like world where you can like walk around and like interact with things by right-clicking, and basically the point is it's a very, very, very realistic depiction of like a zombie world, where you kind of have to manage your hunger and your like illnesses, and if you're sweating too much, like that's a thing, and you can get depressed because you're not reading enough like comic books or something, and you have to like drive around the places, and like driving is a little slow, the map is pretty big, and you have to go and you have to go and like break into buildings so that you can like clear them and then like get the resources from them, and like food will expire and stuff like that. It's an incredibly real, slow-paced kind of game. And just to preface, me and my friends, we played it for 31 hours, which is a decent chunk of time, but we didn't get too far into it. We played through one city, and then we traveled to like another city, like driving really far, and then we just ended the session there, because it was we played for a decent amount of time. We also played 2 playthroughs. We played one playthrough, which was with all the default settings, basically, where if you get bit, you die, and like you lose all your stuff immediately. And then we played a second playthrough, which is that if you get bit, you're not guaranteed to die, but you can die basically. And we like reduced like spawn rates. It makes it a bit easier or a bit more like enjoyable to play, I think, which is like, something worth pointing out. But the point is, basically, overall, this is a 4 out of 5. I enjoyed this a lot. I think I enjoyed it more than my friends, more so, because they were getting a bit tired of it by the end, I think. But it's a fun, I don't know how to explain why I like this so much. It's such a tedious game, but it's also kind of like, the slow pace and the challenge is like kind of fun. And like slowly building up your base is like kind of fun. And like slowly gathering materials is kind of fun. And going out and like to drive with your friends is like kind of fun, you know? It's like all these little like small things like add up to make it like a fun game. But let me see what I actually wrote. So I have some positives and some negatives. The positives, the slow pace and the pedantic nature of having to collect resources and having to stay on top of health. You know, I like all that. It's very fun. The constant feeling of being in danger is kind of cool. You know, there's a lot of games out there where it's like, it really feels like there's no consequences, or like, you know, if you don't have to be really careful when you're doing things because it's actually kind of easy to like survive. This is not one of those games. You have to constantly be on edge. And like, if you misclick by accident, you can die. You got to be constantly aware of like where you're going to aim when you're like hitting a zombie or shooting a zombie, you know? And so I like that. I like the danger. And also like the fact that there's no like, you don't get strong eventually, and like, you don't have to worry about issues like about getting bit by a zombie, for instance. You're always in danger, no matter how strong you get. Yeah, it's kind of cool. At any moment, basically, you could die. So it's fun to kind of play a game like that. And the final like positive thing is that it's just a great like multiplayer experience. It's just a lot of fun. Like I have a lot of like fun memories of like, oh, like when we cleared the prison, like that was super fun. When we're like, even just like when we're driving down the highway for like 10 minutes and we're just like sitting there driving, like trying to go left and right, going around zombies. And my friend like crashes the car and I'm like, God damn it. You know, stuff like that is like fun. Or even just like getting swarmed by zombies and then like we all have to like run to the car and then we leave someone behind because they didn't have enough time and they're bit and they're dead and they have to start again. And, you know, stuff like that is like super fun. So yeah, you know, those are the positives. Now, there's two negatives, which is that firstly, just the preface, we didn't play that long, so maybe the game will like go on and there's like other stuff that to it. And like I know there's things like the power shuts off eventually and the winter will come and make it more difficult and all that. We never got to that point, but the amount that we played, it does kind of feel like there's the fun long term would probably be role playing, where it's like you decide you're going to play a certain way and then you kind of play that way. Like you'd play the role of like someone who's only going to go and hunt a gatherer, like you're not going to have a base or something like that. Or maybe you're going to play the role of like of some maniac who will like barge into every house without clothing. And like there's basically, I feel like role playing is the appeal of this more so in the long term. Like for the short term, it's like kind of just a fun game to play, but to sustain this over a long period of time, I really feel like the role play thing would be a thing. And I'm not sure how much I would like that. And also we just never did that. So yeah. And the other thing is that we learned that like growing food is incredibly long in this game. Like it can take, I don't remember how long it was, but it was some ridiculous amount of time, like 30 hours of game time or something like that to grow a vegetable, which is of course very realistic, but like it really gives no incentive to plant fruit and like invest in your garden and stuff because if it takes so long. But yeah, so anyway, that was Project Zomboid. You know, there's positives, there's negatives. Overall, I enjoyed it quite a lot and I gave it a 4 out of 5. Now, next up, we have Before the Coffee Gets Cold. So this is a book. It's took me around 7 hours to listen to the audiobook. Well, actually, no, it didn't, but it's a 7-hour audiobook. I listened at like 1.5 or 2 times speed, so it was a lot quicker than that for me, but yeah, anyway. And I finished it on the 20th of July. So for context, this is a book that is part of my roughly monthly book club that I've been doing online on Discord or been participating in. It's not my book club. I'm just part of it, you know. And yeah, you know, interesting book. It's a 3 out of 5. Now, the premise for this, because I don't know how popular this is, it's basically you follow the story, like there's 4 different stories, like mini stories within a cafe, where the gimmick of the cafe is that if you sit in a certain spot of the cafe and you like follow some rules and drink like a coffee or whatever, you get to travel back in time to wherever you want to. I don't know if it's wherever you want to go to. I don't actually remember the rules specifically, but you have to travel back in time. And each chapter is like following someone as they go back in time. And it's interesting. Now, overall for this, firstly, I just want to say that it was a little hard to follow sometimes. This is a Japanese book, obviously translated into English. So there's a lot of like Japanese names and it was like hard to keep track of like who was who. And I even wrote them down at points, but even then it was like kind of hard to keep track of. So that's like a big like thing just to keep in mind. And I think that happens to me a lot with like either media I'm trying to get through quickly or like books in general, where I just kind of find it hard to keep track of characters. Now maybe the more I read, the more I get used to it, but yeah, that's an issue. I have 2 other overall thoughts. One of them is that the 2 last stories are my favorites. The one with the dead sister and the mum dying in the future, I guess. Like those are my 2 favorites. And another thing I also really like that I didn't like initially, but I grew to like it over time, which is that there's an overarching story, or there's like the characters within, like you initially think it's like an anthology where they'll be like, oh, this person's going back in time and next time we're going to visit the same cafe and another person's going to go back in time. But these characters do overlap and like you see the same characters throughout the whole thing. And by the end of it, it all comes together and the characters are like the point. And like the point in the end is that like all these people are going to raise this girl because the mother's going to die. It's like a cute ending or whatever. So I like that, you know. But yeah, now I have a few notes for each story. We'll try and keep it short because I don't have too much to say. But the first story is basically this. Again, I also read this a while ago, so I might be inaccurately representing some of these events. But my recollection is that the first story is that we have this girlfriend and boyfriend, and the boyfriend is leaving to go to America, or he's already left to go to America, and the girl kind of regrets not getting him to stay and like goes back in time to go talk to him or talk him out of it somehow, even though she knows that she can't. And let me see what I actually wrote here, because I'm not going to remember my thoughts on this. Interesting. Oh, one thing is that, yeah, this novel, the first chapter especially, spends the overwhelming majority of that first chapter, like maybe like 70 or 80% of it, just like establishing the world, like establishing the rules of time travel, basically, the rules of this cafe, and like reiterating them, and telling you again and again and again. And it's not necessarily bad, it's just weird in that I feel like we get the rest of, like, we get the story elements besides like the rules, the actual story for this first chapter, like in the last, like, I don't know, last like 30 minutes of this story. It's kind of crazy. That's just one note I have. I like the backstory of the guy in this first chapter, which is that he has no girlfriend. He's wanting to move to America for work. He does coding. He goes away for a week to fix a bug that no one believed would be fixed in time. Like, I like it. It's an interesting guy. I also like the climax where he reveals that he was kind of ashamed of his burn. And it's like, oh, that's kind of cute. You know, this poor guy caring about his burn. And I appreciate, let me see, cute ending, I said. Can't change the present, but can change the future. Yeah, true. There's like a little message there, you know. I like it. Story 2 was about this guy who has Alzheimer's, and I think the girl wanted to go, I think like his wife or girlfriend or something wanted to go back and either talk to him or like get a letter from him that he wrote or something like that. Maybe I'm mixing it up with the first story. I don't know, but it was nice. I don't have too much to say again. I have 2 notes on this. One is that there's this anecdote that the girl says in this second story about the guy, which is that there was a point in time where he was going to give her a gift. It was for her Christmas or like her birthday or Christmas or something. And she knew that he had a gift, but to him, he wanted it to be a secret. But she basically approached him and was like, do you have something you want to give me? And the fact that she like kind of said that made him say no and like deny that he ever had a gift, and he like threw it away. And it's kind of like, there's something about that which is like extremely sad, but also like, I really, really like that. It was a really interesting characterization of this guy. Yeah. And the second note I have for this is that I did like the climax here, which is that, oh, I guess, yeah, this is what I said here. The sad passing of a letter telling her to leave him if he forgets her. Yeah, kind of cute. But then we have the last 2 stories. So we have one sister, story 3, which is the sister dies. Like there's basically 2 sisters we follow throughout this. And the one who was trying to get I think it was the younger sister. Like she was trying to get the younger sister to come back to her family to help her out. She dies, the one who was like trying to reaching out and stuff. And we're following the other sister as she's kind of sad about it. And, you know, I really, really got emotionally invested in this. So let me see my notes on this. So I like the start of the story following someone we don't know who's already gone back. Oh yeah, I think this ties into the next story where we're seeing the daughter in the future traveling back in time. But yeah, that's one thing. I like the cute part where the guy thinks he's there for her. Oh yeah, so this is all the beginning stuff where this guy is like coming back from this girl, sorry, is coming back from the future. And we don't know why. Like we're following a new character basically that we don't know anything about. And we don't know her motivation for going to the past. But we do know she's in the past, obviously. And the bartender, or the bar guy, or the coffee guy, I don't know, some guy, whatever, the main guy in this, he's kind of like all talking to her because he thinks that she must be there for him, but we find out that she's not there for him, and it was kind of cute. The death is so sad, like when the sister dies, she was the one who, yeah, it's even sadder because she was the one who was like reaching out to the sister to kind of get her to come back to the family, you know? I keep finding it hard to keep track of who the sister is. Oh yeah, so the sister, like both sisters, I think have like the same name, or like they have, one they use a surname for, or one they use like the first name for, but they like mix it up. And basically these 2 sisters, it was really hard to keep track of who was who. And I think the Japanese is mainly the issue, like the way that you like use names in Japanese or something. I don't know, it was weird. It's cool revisiting the scene from the beginning of the last chapter, Kay seeing her too. I think that must be referring to the scene where the older sister comes and gives the letter to the younger one, or the other way around. I don't know what the ages are, but I think it must be referring to that. That must have happened. I actually don't remember. It's been a while since I read this. And my last note is lovely story and a cute ending with Kay rubbing her stomach and saying, how wonderful was that? And Nagare rhetorically wondering if she will ever give it up because she clearly loves when the time traveling coffee helps people's lives. So cute resolution of that. And then we have story 4, which was a really good one. This is the one where the mother, I'm trying to think, the mother how does it work? The mother must go to the future to talk to her daughter in the future because the mother knows that she's going to die one day. Which is interesting because for some reason in my mind, the coffee only sent you back in time, but I guess it can also send you forward in time. Anyway, let's see. Very sad ending. My notes are just so jumbled about, but it's very sad ending. Also pretty great that Nagare doesn't. Oh yeah. So, okay. You know, I'm jogging my memory here. One really cool small detail that I liked is that when I think it's Kay who goes into the future, basically the wife, she goes into the future and she gets a call from her husband who's like panicking and being like, we're on the way. And then he hangs up. And the reason he does that is because he wants to, like, basically his priority, the husband in the future, wasn't to get like another chance to talk to his wife because he doesn't take that chance. He wants that time to be maximally used so that the daughter can so she can basically speak to her daughter. And it's an interesting, like, it's a small thing, the fact that he like hangs up so quickly, but it's also a very big character thing where it's like, he wants his wife to be happy, you know. He wants the daughter to see the mother, he wants the mother to see the daughter, and he doesn't really care about his own like selfish desire of like wanting to talk to his wife one more time, you know. I like that small character thing. The more mother-daughter meeting was really awkward, and I love that. I love that Kay became a central character. That is true. She's like kind of a background character for the majority of the story until this final scene here, or final story here, sorry, and I like that. She was very cool. And I really, really appreciated the conclusion of this, which I think I mentioned earlier, which is that all the people, like basically Kay comes back home and she's crying, and she realizes that like everyone around her is going to be able to take care of her daughter. She doesn't have to worry, you know. In the future, like all these people will be there to support her, and it's like so cute and, you know, nice. And I said in my final note, oh man, when she returned home and was crying, I almost teared up. And then I have a quote here. Her face was a tearful mess, but it was but it was immediately plain to everyone that these were not tears of sadness. Nagare sighed in relief, and Kotake burst into tears. So, you know, very cute. But that was my half recollection review of Before the Coffee Gets Cold. But yeah, so next up, we have Vinland Saga. So this is a manga that I've been reading for a long time. You know, my first series on this channel here. So if you want to go back and watch all my discussions with Jockey Bacon, you can go look at that series. It's a manga. It's 220 chapters, and I finished it on the 26th of July. So I guess just to give a little bit more context. So this is a story where I watched the anime, which is just one season of the anime at the time. And then later on, I started my YouTube channel. I wanted to make an unscripted YouTube channel. And the first series I went through was with Jockey Bacon, and I talked about Vinland Saga. And that was up until chapter, what, like 150 or something? Like it was somewhat relative. No, 170. No, I think it was like 195 or something like that, I think is what I got up to. And then since then, every other chapter I do have a discussion on, but it's on the secondary NT channel. So Kyle's secondary channel, where sometimes it's me and Kyle. Most of the time it's me, Kyle, and Bacon. Sometimes it's me, Kyle, Bacon, and Mia, and we talk about it. So if you're interested, go to the playlist on this channel here, the Vinland Saga playlist, and you can see me talk about every single chapter in Vinland Saga. Excuse me, just burped. But I mean, you can probably guess my overall thought. It's a 5 out of 5. Vinland Saga is one of my favorite stories ever. It's one of my favorite manga of all time. Not that I've read that many manga, but I love Vinland Saga. Now, this was an absolute like nightmare because I went through and I had to like write notes. But how do I like write notes on Vinland Saga? You know, like this is something I've been consuming for years and years, and I have like so many notes on and so many thoughts on, and I've talked about it to death. And yeah, so basically this was a struggle. But I have a few sections. I have the good, and then I have the bad. And then I have random small things, but let me start with the good. Number 1, the best thing that Vinland Saga does is its bold theme. So firstly, you have to like kind of figure out what the theme is, which I'm not sure that I do, but I have. But my understanding is that Vinland's theme is that violence should be avoided to the greatest extent possible. And through enacting such a philosophy, you can inspire others and create a world with less violence. So I think this is a very, very bold thing. Most stories, they're excited by the violence, you know, they love showing it. They love the characters love it, you know. We love watching a character win in a fight. Vinland Saga is the complete opposite. Whenever a fight happens, it's not a good thing. We don't want the characters to fight. Even when Thorfinn is like fighting for like self-defense or something in chapter 129 or something like that, it's a good thing in the moment, but it's also not a good thing. You know, we shouldn't be breaking these people's arms. It's not good. You know, we don't like violence. Violence is bad. It's just bold. I've never seen anything like this. I really, really like it. That's the first thing I have to say. You know, I think it's probably the first thing everyone says. You know, when it comes to Vinland Saga, you have no enemies, or I have no enemies, or whatever. It's fantastic. I appreciate it a lot. The next thing to say is that yes, Vinland Saga has a fantastic bold theme. It also has a fantastic transformation, which is the transformation of Thorfinn, the vengeant child, you know, filled with hate and seeking blood, eventually becoming this beacon of hope for like people on Vinland. And basically the greatest pacifist in the world. It's bold. I like it. Thorfinn is obviously my favorite character. If anything, just for this like transformation he goes through. It's a subtle. It's not a subtle transformation. It's a transformation that is like it's earned. You know, especially it is earned through those first 2 arcs, and it kind of slowly like it progresses through all the other arcs as well. It's not just like he stops at like the end of Farmland or anything like that. I like it. You know, I'm just gonna keep it at that. You know, there's so much I could say, so much, and also like there's so much I don't know the details of because it's been so long. But number 1, great theme. Number 2, fantastic transformation of the main character. Now the third thing is that there's also some fantastic characters that surround Thorfinn. You know, some other characters that I like a lot. And I have 4 characters that I want to talk about very briefly. You know, the first one is Sigurd, one of my favorite characters in Vinland Saga. So this is basically a very normal, nice guy who has like really good friends, who wants to be like his cruel father, and wants to honor his family and be like a Viking so that he can bring honor to the family name and all that. And this like gets him stuck in like terrible situations in the middle of a war, and he learns that like war is not a good thing, and he learns that he wants to be his own person and stand up for his own ideals. And this is like one of my favorite. I love Sigurd a lot. His confrontation with his father at the end is like one of my favorite, like some of my favorite things in Vinland Saga. It's so good. Like it's just like through Sigurd, we see the story of someone who clearly is a nice person, but is being pushed by the ideals of their time to be something that they don't want to be. And thanks to like the supportive environment they have around them, like his friends, basically, he gets to live his happy life in the end, you know? It's very cute. So Sigurd I like a lot. And I have like I have a quote here, which I did a little bit of research when I was making these notes, but I have one quote here that I like a lot, which is from his friend Fatty, I think. I don't know if he actually has a name, but I just call him Fatty, about Sigurd. I think it captures him very well. It says, "Captured by pirates, reduced to slavery, injured real bad, and at the end of it all, your wife runs away from you. I think it's fine. You're always drawing the short end of the stick. I like that part about you, though." So Sigurd, very sympathetic character. I like him a lot. One of my favorites. The next character I like a lot is Gudrid. So Gudrid, of course, she's the character here, which you can see on the screen. She's one of my favorites. I think when she showed up, it was like one of my favorite parts of the Vinland Saga story in general. So to give some context for people, Gudrid is basically, she's a woman who wants to be a sailor in a world that doesn't allow women to be sailors. She's basically the embodiment of the idea of like, she's clashing the ideals of the oppressive, how do I explain this? I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this. Through Gudrid's story, we see the world of the Vikings, which is showing the world where women are to be in the home or whatever, like that's their place, clash with the ideal of a woman who wants to travel the world. And I find that very interesting and I like it. And the way it's conveyed in the story is like really cute, especially early on where we see her as a kid. And there's like one of my favorite chapters in Vinland Saga as a whole, and it's the one I made like my scripted video on for Vinland's Finest, is a chapter seeing Gudrid when she's a kid, and she gets inspired by this like map that a sailor known as Leif like draws on the beach. And she like stares at it all day, and she's like so excited to go and like see this world that is so vast and large, and it's so fantastic, and she's so excited. And then she grows up, and when she's treated more as a woman than as a kid, she's restricted or oppressed, in the world that she lives in. She's not allowed to be, like, a woman is not to become a sailor in this world. And it's so depressing. And then eventually she like gets the opportunity to travel the world, and it's so like relieving and so exciting. And I really, really like Gudrid and her place in the story. So it was really good. But let me see what I actually wrote, if I have anything interesting. So Yoya being forced to marry a man she doesn't love, Knight right on the edge of giving up her dreams, but is finally given the opportunity to do it. She's very sympathetic, she's very funny, and she's very cute. So we love Gudrid. And the next character I have to talk about, character 3 or 4 is Askeladd. I couldn't talk about Vinland Saga without talking about Askeladd. He's this middle-aged man who leads a bunch of Vikings. He commits atrocities, but deep down, he regrets his life, and he hopes that Thorfinn lives a better one. He's a very, if I had to call one character deep in all of fiction, it'd probably be Askeladd. It was incredibly complex, incredibly deep. He's got a lot of things going on, a lot of clashing ideals, a lot of like, you can't really read him until the end. He's interesting. I mean, what more can I say? If you've seen Vinland Saga, you probably agree with me with everything I'm saying here. Askeladd is a very interesting character. I like him. And then we have my final character that I want to talk about, Anne. So you probably, unless you're like a big fan of mine who's like watched through all my Vinland stuff, you probably don't even remember who Anne is. She's a person back in the really early chapters. I have no idea what chapter it was, where it's the chapter where Askeladd's men go and take over this like village, this Christian village, I think, and they slaughter all the people so that they can have all their supplies to survive the winter. And Anne is the girl who survives that village, basically. And her story is one where she feels oppressed by God. So if Gudrid was oppressed by the societal roles of women in Viking society, and Sigurd was kind of forced to be chained to the ideals of like honoring your family and being like your father and having slaves and all blah 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 blah. If he's to be like that and be forced to be like that due to society, Anne is kind of forced into a world where she's forced to be a Christian. She is forced to fear hell, And the interesting thing that happens is that she steals a ring, and that act is an act of like defiance from God, like defiance from having to be a slave to this fear of God. And the interesting thing that happens is that at the end of the story, she witnesses her village's entire murder. Like she witnesses her family being killed and her basically having no home now. And you would expect for her to feel sad about it or be incredibly depressed and regret stealing the ring and stuff. But in the end, what happens is that she's kind of relieved, or she's not relieved. She's kind of excited. She feels the same. She talks about how she feels the same feeling she had when she stole the ring when her family was like kind of killed for it. And it's just such an interesting thing about like how she clearly, like, obviously she's sad about her family, but at the same time she's incredibly liberated and feels incredibly free. And I find this to be fascinating. So fascinating that even to this day I really, really like Anne as a character. She'd be in my top 5 characters here. So yeah, I don't know what to say. Anne's fantastic. go reread that chapter if you're interested. But I hope I did a good job of explaining that. You know, it's been a while since I read it. I did go back and reread it, so I hope I did that justice. But you know what, just to clarify, let me read my actual note I wrote here. You know, a girl who feels oppressed by fear of God from her Christian upbringing steals a ring as an act defying her enslavement, and on witnessing her village's murder, she finally feels free. What a fascinating character. Anyway, then we have, so those are my favorite characters. Now I have a quick brainstorming of favorite moments and chapters. So this was me, not any rigidly at all. Like I didn't go through all the chapters and all the events or even like spend a significant amount of time on this. I just went through and I'm like, what are all the big moments from like the story that like stand out? So I have quite a long list and I just want to mention them all. So I have Askeladd versus Bjorn. I remember liking that a lot. I remember that really made me feel like Bjorn was like a real person. I was like, this is weird. Like Bjorn, I don't remember thinking much of Bjorn at all, except for the fact that he felt real. And I was like, wow, it's kind of crazy. There's Kettle's trial for the kids who stole the flower with like Peter having that funny panel where he's like, there's like a warped perspective and he's like, we should just beat them or something. I remember liking that chapter a lot. Obviously Arnide's death was really impactful, and then deciding to go to Vinland for her sake, that was really impactful. Thorfinn taking 100 punches, that was a really fantastic thing. Oh, we talked about this before, but Gudrun's backstory when she was like on the boat and seeing when she was on the beach seeing the map that Leif drew on the ground, like that chapter is fantastic. Hild's flashbacks to her family and growing up with the hunting teacher that she had, like that was all fantastic. There were these, which I don't think I've ever really talked about much beyond like when I talked about it with Bacon in his discussion, but these are things that have always stood out to me as really good. There's this story of this random Viking who's philosophizing about the meaning of life, and like he's talking about goals in life and what is Valhalla, and he's basically a really big philosopher, and he's talking about how he wants to like see what happens, like if when his head's friend gets chopped off, like make sure he shrugs so we can see like is the soul in the head or the body, and basically at the end of the chapter he like misses his friend's suicide. And I always thought that was really fascinating. That's one of my favorite things in Vinland Saga as well. And then there's another kind of short story, which is there's a random Viking guy who dies thinking he'll go to Valhalla, but realizes in the end that Valhalla never comes. And it's just fantastic. And I have a quote here because I did go back to that chapter, and it always stood out to me. And I like, it's probably not like this into Japanese. This is purely just like a translation thing and the way it rhymes in like English. But at the end of this chapter, he says, "Boss, friends don't die. There's no Valhalla. It's all a lie." And I don't know why, it just so emotionally struck me. Like this poor guy just like living his whole life thinking that there's going to be a Valhalla, and right at the end just realizing that it doesn't exist, and wanting to tell his friends not to sacrifice his life and learn like the lesson that he did in the end, but he can't because like they're not going to hear him. And I really, really like this chapter a lot. But anyway. Next up, we have Thorfinn using Askeladd's technique against Garm because he sees Garm as an older version of himself. That was really cool. We have Sigurd fighting Halfdan and then leaving with Hat and coming back with a kid. That was fantastic. We have the initial stages of like settling at Vinland and just like the different setting, the like establishing a new village, like all these new characters that we're interacting with, like all that stuff was fantastic. We have Hild meeting the bear spirit. I thought that was really cool. We have Hild forgiving Thorfinn. That was really impactful and fantastic. We have Misekbikwe seeing the future and the nuclear bomb going off. So this is something that I was a bit hesitant on. Like I was like, oh, it feels like it's breaking the lore of like, is this a science fiction thing or is it like actually meant to be based in reality and stuff? And just in retrospect, I like it a lot. I like the boldness of it. I like the visuals of it. It's all fantastic. We have Ivar chopping off Misekbikwe's hand. That was pretty crazy. We have all the Lanu people banding together as a unified army. I really like that a lot. We like the disease spreading throughout Vinland and Knut's kingdom, like simultaneously. I thought that was fantastic. And of course, we have Einar's death in the end. You know, I thought that was very emotionally impactful too. So those are all the moments that immediately just thinking back stood out to me. So yeah. Now, I also have a ranking of like what I think my favorite arcs are. To me, when I was like doing this just immediately, like when I was like, okay, let me like quickly say what I think. It went like Vinland is my favorite, followed by Baltic Sea War, followed by the Farm arc, followed by Prologue, which those are not the official names. Okay, but that's the ones I'm using. But the more I thought about it, and the more when I was like going through trying to think of like all my favorite moments and stuff, I think I probably would rate the Vinland arc and the Baltic Sea War arc, the Eastern Expedition. I probably would rate those pretty equally. There's a lot of really good stuff in the Eastern Expedition, like the Baltic Sea War stuff that I like a lot. So I think that I would raise that to be equivalent to the Vinland arc. I like both of them a lot. And then I would say after that is the Farm arc, and then I'd say the weakest is the Prologue. But yeah, it's my final ranking. But anyway, that, you know, I'm just talking so positively about Vinland Saga. I have two negative things about Vinland Saga. One is that this has nothing to do with Vinland Saga itself, but has to do with me, which is that I don't like the month-to-month reading experience. It's very hard to keep track of. I much prefer, like, when I was binging through Vinland Saga, it was much better. Like, I got to keep track of all the motivations and the themes and the characters and all the ideas and all of that. I got to keep track of much better. Month-to-month is, like, incredibly hard to just keep track of what's going on. And over such a long period of time of many years, it was a struggle. So I don't like that. I wish I could binge it. And I'm sure one day, you know, one day if you want to know what I think about this as a whole, you got to wait for my reread, which I'm sure will happen, but it could be a while. And my other negative thing to say is that the ending is like very, I mean, it's not really negative, it's more of a neutral thing, but the ending's fine. Like it's perfectly, I said in my discussion with Kyle when we talked about it, I was perfectly whelmed by the ending of Vinland Saga. Wasn't too good, wasn't too bad. It was very safe and straightforward. Nothing too crazy happened. It is what it is, you know? My last negative thing to say about Vinland Saga. But overall, Vinland Saga is one of my favorite stories I've ever consumed. It has one of the boldest themes I've ever seen, some of the best characters I've ever seen, some of the best moments in any story I've ever seen. I didn't even talk about stuff like the art, which is fantastic, which obviously gets way better over time as well. Vinland Saga is fantastic, so go read it if for some reason you haven't. Next up, we have Encanto 2021. So this is a movie. It's an hour and 49 minutes long, and I watched it on the 27th of July. So if for some reason you haven't seen this, the premise of this movie is that you're following a family who, oh god, it's been a while since I watched this. Let me see if I remember. We're following a family who is living in a house, a magical house, and each of the key members of the family, if not just every member of the family, has like a special power that they get due to the magic from this eternal candle that they have. And the premise is that you have one member of the family, Mirabelle or whatever. She doesn't have a power. And the magic of the house is like breaking down and the family is going to get destroyed because the magic is running out. And that's the premise of the movie. And overall, this is a fantastic movie. I like this a lot. So let me see what I have in my overall thoughts for this. So the first thing is that it's a very cute, wholesome story about family. And I like all the family elements in this. It's really fun seeing all the characters interacting. It is a very big cast of characters. I don't know if I could tell you any of the names. I know there's like Isabel, there's obviously Mirabelle, there's the grandmother, there's the strong sister, there's Antonio, was that the name of the like kid who was getting his powers? There's obviously Bruno. I mean, there's like a very large cast of characters and they're all very interesting and I like them a lot. But yeah, it was a cute story, cute, wholesome story. I love the musical sequences. And not just, I mean, just like in all terms. Like, I like the music itself. Like, the music is really great. And I think the animation is fantastic as well. And, like, the directing of them and stuff. So, in two regards, they're both great. Let me see. I said, to be honest, this is enough to carry the movie alone. And that's absolutely true. Even if it was just, like, a collection of these, like, random musical scenes, it probably would be fantastic. Oh, and I just have my favorite line here. He told me that the life from my dreams, or whatever. I like that a lot. It was a fantastic moment when it, like, changed up in that song. You know, it's great. I also wrote that I really like the We Don't Talk About Bruno song. That was also fantastic. But that's all I really have for those music notes. But let me just talk about what I actually like about this movie, okay? My favorite part, which is the grandmother and her backstory, basically, which is the climax of the movie. I thought this was fantastic. And this is really all, I will talk about it in detail now, but that's basically all I have to say about this movie. So what I like about the grandmother, firstly, is that she's a flawed character, which, you know, is very interesting sometimes. In this case, it's interesting because she's like the head of the family, and you would kind of expect her to be okay with the fact that, like, one of her grandchildren doesn't have powers, but she's not. She's kind of upset at it. And at the end of the movie, she's like getting mad at Mirabelle for just like destroying the family due to like being a bad omen and stuff like that. And like everything she's doing is bad. And I'm like, this is an interesting, you wouldn't expect like the grandmother character would be such a flawed character, you know? But yeah, so I thought that was interesting, you know? Obviously she cares about her family, but like her past is making her overly protective of like keeping the current family together, you know? It was interesting. But the best thing the movie does is absolutely the climax, which is so perfect. And it made me, I don't remember if it made me cry the first time through. I think I almost cried, but I rewatched it to make this like review here, and it absolutely made me cry like the second time through. And oh my goodness. But basically, like I said, the whole movie, you're seeing this grandmother who's like overly protective of the house and the family and their magic and their current life. And you're like, by the end of like the main part of the movie, you're getting really fed up with her, and she's like blaming Mirabelle for like all the family's recent misfortunes. And I'm getting really upset at her, you know? And then you see the backstory, which is that you get this flashback where she has like 3 babies and they have nowhere to run because they have to like run away from violence in their home. And her husband is basically like, as they're running, the husband has to like go back and like hold off the people who are running toward them to attack them so that like the wife can get away. And when the husband goes and dies and sacrifices himself, she breaks down and like starts crying. And then we get this scene here, which is the image on the screen. And the magic candle is basically created from her like absolute resolve that she will build a life for her family. And she will use the sacrifice of her husband and she will build this family. Like no matter what, it will happen. And it really like it gives the symbol, like it gives symbolism to the literal magic in this movie, which I like a lot. Where whenever you see the candle now, it's not just a candle, which is like magic. It's like, it's the resolve of the grandmother who promised to herself that she will build this family because of her husband's sacrifice, you know? It's just so emotionally impactful. And it like it reframes like all the cracks in the magical house. It like reframes that as like, instead of just being like this magic gimmick, it's it's about like the need for a new foundation. Like the grandmother has this like resolve that will go on and span like like generations, literally, but it won't last forever. And eventually a new foundation is needed. And instead of having the foundation be on one person now and one person's sacrifice, the foundation that is needed to rebuild this house, which is what happens at the end of this movie, is centered around everyone. And you kind of have everyone. You have the town chipping in, you have the family chipping in, all building the new foundation for this house. And it just ties it's just so emotionally satisfying at the end. Like symbolically, literally, it's like so fun. The music is great. Like all the characters are happy. It's lovely. It's so cute. I really, really, really like the end of this movie. But yeah, that's really, honestly, that's all I have to say about Encanto. That was my favorite bit, like the climax. It really, really elevates the movie. But yeah. So go watch it if you haven't seen this for some reason. It's a fantastic animated movie. But next up, we have A Sign of Affection. So this is an anime. It's 12 episodes long, and I watched it on I finished it on the 1st of August. So just to give some context, if you haven't seen this for some reason, which I don't know how, I think this is like somewhat popular. I think I don't remember if I heard about this like independently, like if I heard about it or I heard about it through this friend I watched it with, but I think it's like pretty popular. But the point is that this is a romance story between a guy who like travels a lot around the world and the main character, the girl, who is deaf. So, a sign of affection. She's signing, and the affection is the love element. But yeah, my takeaway, firstly, this is a 4 out of 5. I like this a lot. And the takeaway is that this is a very cute slice of life romance. I like the sign language elements. And I like the main characters, and I think they're all pretty interesting. So that's my general, 1-sentence summary of like what I thought about this. Now, let me look at my overall thoughts. So, it's been a while since I watched this, 1st of August. So firstly, the main appeal of A Sign of Affection is definitely Yuki, the main character. She's incredibly cute and she's incredibly relatable in the way that she like constantly doubts her self-worth, especially when it comes to like romance stuff, I think. And I like her a lot. Like the cutest moment, and one of my favorite moments in this is just how cute it is, which is that it's at the end of episode 1 where I think like her and Itsuomi, who's like the boyfriend eventual, they're like texting each other, and she asks him like if he thinks the world is a huge place, and then he says yes, and then he says it'd be smaller with you in it or something like that, or let me in yours. I just saw it in my notes, and then she like jumps for joy and she's like doing a sign. I don't know what the sign is. Maybe it's for love or like yay or something like that. But it's just the cutest, most wholesome thing in the world, and I like it a lot. So Yuki is we love Yuki. Yuki's very cute. And not like a condescending way, just like she's just cute. Like I like watching her do stuff. Like I like it. She's a good character. My next overall thought is that I like the Yuki Itsuomi relationship a lot. I think it's very cute. And I don't have any like strong like, oh, this is why or anything like that. I just think I enjoy their quiet moments together. Like I have a list here. Like I like moments where he hears her laugh for the first time. Like that was very cute. I like when they wave at each other at the train station or whatever. I don't know if it's a train station or like some other thing, but when they're waving at each other, stuff like that. When they're hanging out at Itsuomi's house, just like together, like quietly, just like chilling there, When they're like texting each other, like I like all that stuff. When they're looking at the book with all the signs that like Itsuomi has written down. Like I just like all these small little like slice of life hangout like relationship elements, I like all that. Another element I like about the relationship is Itsuomi as a character, which I think was kind of interesting, where initially he's kind of portrayed as this very like perfect, like he can't do anything wrong. Like he's just a really great guy who's always saying the right thing and is always there at the right moment and blah, blah, blah. And then eventually you get this reveal that he has like a little bit of insecurity, and in 2 elements. In one element, you see the insecurity in that when he sees Yuki's best friend not best friend, but like childhood friend, he gets like a little protective of Yuki, and it's like, oh, this is like kind of interesting, He's like doesn't want Yuki to be taken away by this other person who's interested in it. And then the second thing is that you find out eventually that also he, despite the fact that it seemed like he was always there at the right moments and he was always saying the right thing, he later on talks about how like he was very worried about like trying to do all little things and stuff to get her attention and kind of like make sure that she liked him, and like it's kind of cute. He was putting in more effort than it seemed, and I kind of thought that was a cool reveal. But yeah. Now, what else do I have to say about Itsuomi? I think I have some notes on him. I like his relationship with he has an independent of Yuki. He has a relationship with Emma and Sheen, I think they say in the dub, which are 2 of his high school friends. And I thought that was very cute. Like they know each other very well, very clearly. And they have like moments where it feels like they just like hang out and like things can go unsaid. Like they don't need to talk about things. Like when Itsuomi is like having troubles, or not Itsuomi, whenever there's like relationship troubles, like even with Emma and like Sheen and stuff, I feel like there's moments where like Itsuomi and Sheen will like talk to each other, but they don't like say exactly what's happening, and they kind of know like the bad stuff is going on. I get that vibe, I like it. So the relationship is kind of cool. I also loved Itsuomi's approach to handling Oshi, who's Yuki's childhood friend, where the idea is that you have this guy who really, really is jealous of the boyfriend, obviously, and really hates the boyfriend because of that, and like probably is like overprotective of Yuki and stuff like that. And the way that Itsu kind of gets through this guy is that he basically forces him to get to know him more. Like, he shows him who Itsu is. Itsu shows him who he is, basically. So he doesn't see him as some sort of stranger. He sees him as a person, you know? And I thought that was really cool, you know, the way of like winning over the childhood friend. And talk about the childhood friend, my last overall note is that I also liked Oshi. Oshi was a very interesting character, the childhood friend. Though his story is utterly depressing, you know, what can I say? He's clearly loved Yuki his whole life, but she doesn't see him that way. And she gets a boyfriend and it's sad, you know, I feel bad for him, but he was great. We love him. And now I have a few miscellaneous notes. And when I say a few, I mean I have two. And one of them is a very miscellaneous note, which is that I think they do a very good job of portraying Yuki as university age, like a university woman, basically. And I don't know how they do it. Like, I think it's a combination of like her quiet, like internal monologue, like just the maturity or the quietness of it, the way, like just the way, even just maybe her character design, the type of clothing she wears, like stuff like this, like it's a scarf with like a fancy, like a kind of fancy jacket, and like it just makes her look older and more like university age, which I think is kind of cool. Like, it makes her look a bit distinct from like the more like teenage kind of characters that you see in a lot of these stories, you know? So I thought that was kind of cool. And my other miscellaneous note is just about a particular scene. I'm just reading it now, which I thought was like incredibly real and like very funny, which is that you have Kyoya, you know, I wrote down the name here, you know, I remember him. Basically, there's like Yuki and her best friend, whose name is Rin, I think. And you've got Itsuomi and his best friend, who is Kyoya. Maybe not best friend, but like good friend or whatever, or boss or something like that. And those two are like interested in each other or whatever. But what happens is that initially they're like talking beside this river, I think. And Kyoya's talking about how like, oh, I don't want dating. It's too much trouble. I have no interest in it or whatever. But as soon as he finds out that Rin is it Rin? It doesn't sound right, but I wrote down Rin. But whenever he finds out that Rin is interested in him, he like kind of changes his tune and like he actually is very interested in dating her. And I thought that was incredibly real, you know, like you can say all these philosophical things about how you don't like dating and it's not, but then as soon as someone is interested in you, you're like, yeah, you know what, maybe it is, you know, I kind of like her. She's kind of cute. I kind of want to date her. But it was very cute. That conversation scene alone was very cute, where you have both of these people who clearly are interested in each other, but they're both like too polite or shy or like nervous to say anything about it. Yeah, I like it. Very cute. But that's a sign of affection. That's really all I have to say about it. I recommend it. If you like romance stuff, this is a very interesting kind of romance story. So I would highly recommend going and watching it. Next up, we have Takopi's Original Sin. So this is an anime. It's 6 episodes long, and I finished it on the 2nd of August. And this is unequivocally a 5 out of 5. This is potentially my favorite anime of all time, is just what I want to say about this. So the premise of this is that you have this girl who is also just go watch it. Okay. If you don't know anything about this, please just go watch it before I spoil it all. But the premise is that you have a girl who is living a terrible life. And when I say girl, I mean like a little girl. Like I don't know how old she is, like 5, not 5, Jesus Christ, she's not 5, like 8 years old to like 9 years old, something like that. She's really young. And she's living a incredibly depressing life where her mother is basically neglects her. Her dad's abandoned her. All she has is this dog that like keeps her company. And she's like getting bullied at school ruthlessly. And eventually she runs into this alien who's called Takopi, this cute little pink alien. And his goal is to bring happiness to Shizuka, you know? And that's like the premise of the story. And it's just incredibly depressing. Eventually she like commits suicide, and the whole plot is that like Takopi winds back time so that he can prevent her from committing suicide. And that's like the early plot. And then the plot eventually progresses to the fact that like Marina, her like enemy at school, kills her or gets her dog killed, and we don't know if the dog's dead or not. So she kind of so Shizuka wants to go and travel to her dad in Tokyo because her mum said that like the dog was sent to the dad, and we're like, did the dog die or was sent to the dad? And it's like basically there's like a whole story in this, and it's really fantastic. But there's a few things I want to talk about. So firstly, production wise, this is beautiful. It's only 6 episodes, so they really clearly had a lot of time to put into this, I'm guessing, because visually it was absolutely beautiful. Like the art, the animation, the colors, the directing, everything about this is absolutely phenomenal. Even there's like tiny small details in this that I like a lot, which is that even inside the character's eyes, there's like dynamic like shapes or whatever. Like whenever Takopi is like presenting himself as a human, like disguised as a human, he has like a little pink like dot in like the corner of his eye. Whenever Shizuka is like getting excited about things or something is happening with her, she'll get like stars in her eyes. Or whenever Azuma is like in love with Shizuka, he gets like little love hearts in his eyes, little love hearts effects. It's just so cool. Like little things like that make it stand out. It's like, this is a lot of attention to detail has been placed in this. I also really, really liked firstly, just everything is really good. Directing, there's like a million shots I could show you that are like fantastic in the show. And if you want, like, go watch my scripted video. I just compiled like a bunch of them in that. And that was only for the first 2 episodes. But the other thing I liked a lot just visually is when eventually we go to Planet Happy, and it's like a completely different art style to the rest of the show. And it's like very like, I don't even know what to say. It's like a little like, 3D a little bit, like CGI, but like it's little. It's just completely different. It's really cool. Like it does a good job of making this planet feel very alien, which is kind of cool. But anyway, what can I say? You know, visually, really good. Another thing that I have a note on in terms of production is that there is aesthetic dissonance in this, which I find very interesting. And I did make a video where I like touched on this a little bit, but basically there's a very stark contrast between the severe subject matter of the show, like a very depressing, suicidal kind of subject matter and bullying and neglect and all that, compared to the very bright, vibrant like colors and the cute art style of the show, which is an interesting thing. I like the aesthetic dissonance. And the final production thing I want to say is that I really, really like the music in this as well, especially one song, which is like the main theme, I guess, in the show, which is like la 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 la. Like, I don't know how to say it beyond like, it conveys a very complex feeling of like, of innocence, but also like incredible like sadness, but also like kind of joy at the same time. It's like a very interesting feeling that the song conveys. I really, really like it. So yeah, production wise, this is a phenomenally produced show. The equivalent that I would say is like, last year I talked about how great and how like Look Back is like one of the best visual things I've seen in my life. This year, Takopi's Original Sin is one of the best like visual looking things I've seen in my life. Yeah, Takopi's, I love this. Production wise, absolutely beautiful show. The second thing is that the story was paced and structured fantastically. Like there's an adequate, like it's only 6 episodes, which is good. Like I like that, really quick to get through this. And you get like a nice cohesive, complete story in 6 episodes. But there's a good amount of time spent on all the main characters. You had a good amount of time on Shizuka and Marina, on Azuma, and on Takopi. And it really feels rewarding by the end of the show where you know all these characters pretty well and you like get really good conclusions to them all. So yeah, pacing wise, it's like really good. You get all the time for all these characters. Also structure wise, it's a really interesting structure where you have dual protagonists and you have dual villains, where you have Marina and Shizuka, and at one point of the story, Shizuka is the protagonist and Marina is the villain, and then you swap it, and for a few episodes in the latter half of the show, you have Marina as the protagonist, you have Shizuka as the villain. And I've never seen a show like this before. It's kind of cool. And no one is happy at the end of like either of their stories, except we'll talk about what happens actually at the end of this, but it's an interesting structure to say. I haven't seen it before and I thought it was really cool. That's it, you know. Number 1, production great. Number 2, paced and structured fantastically. And then number 3, the story is emotionally gripping, engaging, and has a fantastic conclusion. So I have like a structured kind of thing I want to talk about this. One is that the story inspires great sympathy. So it's obviously a very depressing story where you're following children who are like living terrible lives, basically. And the show does a very good job of just making you sympathize with them, feel terrible for them. So the first one is obviously Shizuka. Her story is obviously very sad, you know. I'm seeing her neglect that is incredibly like saddening. And the fact that like she believes that she can't do anything about it is like heartbreaking. We have Marina, who's like being abused by her mother, and her dad is like cheating on her mum, and that's her home life is a mess, and you feel terrible for that. You have Azuma, who's feeling like a failure and like a useless kind of son, and is always being compared to his brother, and that feels incredibly sad as well. And there's one particular line that I have here for Azuma that really, really stood out to me, which is that he, at one point at the end of his like big episode where he's the main character, basically, he's breaking down to his brother about like how like he just hasn't been able to like talk to his mother and he just feels so lost and everything. And the thing he says is that mum bought these glasses for me, but I couldn't tell her the lenses aren't right for me anymore. And I felt like, man, it's such a real thing for like a kid who's really worried about just disappointing his mum. He can't even bring up this tiny thing about like he needs new glasses. It was so sad. But yeah, talking about sympathy, the last one is, of course, you feel incredible sympathy for Takopi at the end, where he's just struggling to understand things and he can't explain himself. And it's just, I don't know what to say. You know, he struggles to express himself, but he's there for Shizuka regardless. And it's so, like, there's so much sympathy in this story for these characters, and I love it a lot. But another thing the story does is that it inspires great hatred, you know? Initially for Marina, which the show does a wonderful job of making you hate Marina initially, you know, for bullying this poor young Shizuka who believes that she can't do anything about her situation. And then in the latter half of the show, the story inspires great hate toward the neglectful parents and adults in this story. Every parent and adult is neglectful. And when I say every, I mean like all the parents and even the teacher. Like you see that it is interesting. It's obviously intentionally done where the story is trying to portray every adult as neglectful or like unattentive and stuff like that. Where obviously, you know, Shizuka's mom is never home and she's like escorting, and Marina's dad is like obviously not there, and Shizuka's dad has abandoned her, and Marina's mom is incredibly abusive and like cuts her with a bottle and gives her a scar, and Azuma's mom is obviously incredibly like overbearing and has too high expectations. And even their teacher is like, where there's like a few scenes we get of the teacher just coming in and being really like, I don't know how to say it, like really like they completely lack energy, and they're like really depressed in the way they speak, and they clearly don't notice or like care that like Shizuka is being bullied and like everyone's written like death and die and slut and like all that stuff on her like locker and her desk, and it's just so like it inspires great hatred in these people, you know. So that was really good. The story is great, like getting emotions out of you, which is obviously everything I like in a story. Whenever a story can make me feel things, you know. But other than this, the story also has a bunch of like small mysteries that like keep you engaged, and like unresolved plot threats that you're like interested to see where they go. Plot threads, sorry, not threats, that are constantly in like the back of your mind when you're watching. And I have a few. So one is that obviously, is Chappie alive? It's like a central thing. With the show, you're kind of like, I think he's probably dead, but you don't know for sure like until the end, you know. So that's like a thing that keeps you interested the whole time. You've got like the mystery of like why can't Takopi go back to Planet Happy? Like what happened there? Like you hear about it at the beginning of episode 1. In the like opening, you see his like spaceship crash or whatever. It's like what's happening here? So you're constantly interested in like what's going on there. And then also the fact that like the episode 1 is called To You in 2016, and it's like, oh, what's going on here? And it's like very I would guess, an Attack on Titan reference to like To You in 2000 years or whatever. And it does end up being a time travel thing as well. But anyway, it's, yeah, you know, it's a lot of mysteries, which keep you on the edge of your seat, which I like a lot. And now the final thing I want to say about this, the story-wise, is the simple, earnest conclusion, which I have written in my notes here about that. So what happens is that you have basically toward the end of this show, in the final episode, you have a final confrontation between Shizuka and Takopi. And Takopi goes and he apologizes for not understanding how she feels. And then Shizuka starts beating on him, like with a rock, and like literally like beating on him. But well, I guess both verbally and physically, you know, or physically and verbally. And eventually just like starts breaking down crying. Like there's no solution at all. It's just, she just like accepts that her life is the way it is, and hurting Takopi isn't going to do anything about it. It's just incredibly sad. And like, firstly, I love the beginning of this scene where you're seeing Takopi stand up against Shizuka for the first time, because he has realized that like there is more to Shizuka, there is more to life than purely providing Shizuka's happiness. There's the happiness of like the people around her as well, and the people of the world. Like you don't want to like, Shizuka's happiness isn't worth the death of Marina. Shizuka's happiness isn't worth like these people having their stomachs cut open and stuff like that, you know, like making these people sad, as Takopi says. It's not worth it. And also Takopi's own happiness. He brings up the fact that like Shizuka doing these things makes him sad, and it's not right. And I really, really liked how he standed up to her. And I like that scene a lot. Stood up to her, sorry, not standed up, but yeah. Let me see, what else do I have in my notes? So yeah, there's that kind of element to it. I also just the way that it's done visually as well, it's like really beautiful. Like every scene in this show is amazing. Like visually just like breathtaking. But the way it's conveyed visually, like Takopi standing in resistance, is that like golden stars like shining off him and like going into Shizuka's view, and like we're seeing her perspective of the stars like sparkling near her, and you think it's going to inspire her to like kind of get over like what she's like feeling and not wanting to like inspire hate, like not have any more hatred anymore and stuff like that. But the stars like they fade and they turn purple as like they go into Shizuka, and it's because obviously the start, like Takopi's words still aren't getting to her, you know. It's phenomenal. And I just want to emphasize that Takopi is such an interesting perspective that we see the story through. I made a video about this, how there's like two clashing perspectives, which I'll talk about a bit more later, but it's like not even like Takopi's perspective is basically the perspective of a naive child who was forced into a position as a caretaker over someone who's like very clearly depressed, and he himself is like hurting too. And it's interesting because like, firstly, this isn't like a thing that would even happen in reality. So it's not like, oh, what a great theme like Takopi embodies or anything. It's just like a novel, interesting perspective. Like this child who is like, he is a child. He's like the child of his mother or whatever. But like, he's such a naive, like he doesn't really know much about the world or much about humans. He doesn't understand like complex psychology or anything like that. He's just trying to help Shizuka, but he can't because he like doesn't really understand her. And it's so sad and so like, I feel for him. I don't know what to say beyond just saying it's an interesting perspective. Like Takopi is such a fascinating character. But yeah, there's that. Anyway, what was I saying? So back on more on this conclusion stuff. I love Shizuka's breakdown. And specifically, like certain things she says, like the small things she points to that like a child would point to that are like just so heartbreaking. And one of them is that like, what should I have done when an adult asked me, are your parents home? But no one was. Like, what is she supposed to say to that, you know? And it's like little things like that to get to her. And the other thing, this is the one that really got to me, which is that she says, they all say I stink, but where do I stink? Mum never told me. And it's like, it is sad. It's just so sad. I don't know what to say, but I'm just saying, if you get it, you know, if you don't, you're not going to get it. It's just incredibly sad to see like a kid, just people tell her she stinks, but not tell her like how to fix it, you know? I don't know. It gets to me, you know? Oh my goodness. Poor Shizuka. But yeah, after the scene with Takopi, she like goes on a walk, and she walks for, who knows, days and days, maybe weeks. And she's like basically crying the whole time. And it's like, she's just crying. Like there's no solution. There's it's not like a cry of like, oh, I'm gonna let all these tears out and they're gonna be great. It's just like a sad, she's just crying. Like there's nothing you can do. And it's just beautiful. Like the insert song is just absolutely beautiful. And it's just sad, you know. I love when the show makes me sad, and it very much makes me sad. But yeah, then Takopi, he basically resets the world and leaves some traces of himself behind that will eventually connect Shizuka and Marina. And then we get the big wrap up, which is that bad things have happened, bad things will continue to happen, and your life isn't going to turn around. But things can be made better through talking. That is the conclusion that we get. And it's such like it's like a small, like earnest, like small thing where it's like talking just makes things better. It's not going to make your life good. It's not going to like change your future. It's not going to, it's not really going to do much, but it'll give you someone to talk to. And I just find this so like perfect as like a conclusion. Like Marina and Shizuka, they still live the terrible lives that they like, the terrible, like neglected, abused lives. Like Shizuka is still going to be neglected. Her dad's going to abandon her. She's still going to try and commit suicide, but fail. Marina's still going to get abused and have the scar on her face from her mother when she broke the bottle on her. But now these lives can be tolerated because the two of them are able to like talk to each other about them, you know? Just having someone to talk to can make an intolerable life tolerable. And it's just such a like heartfelt, wonderful conclusion. I love it. It's fantastic. And the episode ends with like Marina and Shizuka, they're just walking away into the distance together, side by side, as like the music for the ending is playing, the credits are coming down, and we're panning up to the sky. And in the sky, we're seeing these stars, and some of them are pink, obviously to symbolize like Takopi's influence on their lives. And it's just so perfect. The conclusion of this, I love it. I was crying so much, you know, talking. Yeah. Happiness is born through talking, as Takopi would say. But anyway, I have a few more notes to say, which is that one is that just the perspective through which we see the story is fascinating. I made a video on this if you want to go check it out. Look at the Elite Ari channel. Look at my Takopi's original sin video. But some of the coolest stuff we see is like just seeing Takopi's like weird, naive perspective. And I think this is done best in the 5th episode, like the one with the Marina flashback stuff. Oh, not flash. Oh, I guess technically flashback, but where Takopi is basically at the beginning of his journey, where he's very, very naive on the world and doesn't really understand much at all. And there's a scene where like he sees Marina's mother like screaming at her and like holding this like glass bottle in front of her face, and his reaction is like, oh, it's so lively in the house or whatever. It's like stuff like that. Like it's littered throughout the show where it's like, man, this like kid, the guy just doesn't understand, you know, what's happening here. And it's just so novel. Novel is like the word to say. It's so interesting. Like I like it. It doesn't even have to go anywhere. It doesn't have a purpose or anything. It's just so interesting. What else is there? There's also the scene where Marina is like standing on top of the corpse of her like mother that she just killed, the bloodied corpse with blood going everywhere. And Takopi is just like sitting there talking about his day. And it's like, he just doesn't understand like how terrible of a situation this is. It's like the contrast and the interesting perspective that we're seeing of this character who just has no idea what violence is like this. He only knows happiness on Planet Happy, you know? It's so cool. But yeah, and also that scene, like where he basically sees Marina kill or stand on top of her dead mother, and then he like goes into a ship and is like, don't worry, Marina, I'll go kill Shizuka for you. And it's like the stark contrast of like the words he's saying and his like happy, cute appearance, and like the little cute spaceship is in, and just visually it's like so beautiful. Like the animation is great, the clouds are really cool, and when he flies in the distance and these sparkles are like going into Marina's room and like fading out as she like stands there and is about to kill herself with the bottle. It's just so visually amazing as well. But yeah, that's it. But that's what I got for the story. Now I have some themes. There's like 2 themes that I think are pretty key in this. One is understanding, obviously. So if you try to help someone without truly understanding them, like Takopi tries to do, then you can only make things worse, or you can make things worse, not necessarily only, but you can. Because clearly he went, and the reason that Shizuka killed herself is because he gave her the ribbon and he didn't understand what was going on there. And obviously, you know, that's what's going on here. Understanding is important. And the second theme, which I think is the central theme to this, which is what makes the conclusion so fantastic, is communication. So like I said before, sometimes you go through things that are just plain terrible and there's nothing you can really do about it, but talking to other people about it can help you get through it. Eventually there will be people like Marina who will help you get through it, basically. And people like Shizuka from Marina's perspective who will help you get through it. And there's also going to be people who don't understand it, like Takopi, who regardless are going to be by your side the whole time to try and help you get through it. And those people are also equally valuable. Yeah, communication is, I think, the big like conclusion of this, where just like talk to people, you know, you never know when, who might be able to help you, who might be there with you, who might empathize with you, you know, just talk to people, you know, happiness is born through talking, as Takopi would say. So yeah, that's all my main notes. Now I have like a bunch of miscellaneous notes that I want to talk about. The first is, let's see, I love small things that make it feel special. Oh yeah, there's like small things in the show that make it feel special. One is the fact that it's only 6 episodes, which is great. And one is the fact that like the first episode is like 40 minutes long, and it's like, oh, we get like a nice dive into the show for the first episode. Another thing is that like they do a Mushoku Tensei style, like we're going to skip the opening when Shizuka is going to Tokyo, which is this episode here, which she looks so cute in the elevator, by the way. Oh my goodness, so adorable. But they skip the opening visuals to show like her as a montage traveling, and I thought that was really cute and like really great. It's been a while since I've been so excited for the next episode of something. That is true. I was very excited to watch this week to week. The warning, the episode 1 has this like very funny warning, which is like, it starts with like a trigger warning or whatever. It's like, the content in this is very bad or whatever. And then the next thing they bring up is that like, just so you know, we don't condone suicide. We don't want people to commit suicide. I'm like, really? Thank you for clarifying that you don't want people to kill themselves. But that was very funny. Another thing is that I absolutely love Takopi's voice actor. She is fantastic. It's just so perfect. And even like this isn't like a voice acting thing, but like the fact that Takopi ends all his sentences in Pete, like I'm happy Pete or whatever, like it's like a little, I don't know what you call it. In Japanese, there's a term for it, I'm sure. I like it. It's very cute and very great. And even like in serious moments, he's still saying it. It's not like a cute thing he does. It's like literally just part of the way he speaks. I like it a lot. Very much reminds me of the Doctor Who, like Chan, Professor Do or whatever, like Chan Do thing. I thought that was really cool. Anyway, so we love that voice actor. I also really, really like Shizuka's voice actor. She's a fantastic voice actor too. Especially in that breakdown scene when she's like talking about like, she's yelling at Takopi and like beating him with a rock and talking about like, oh, people tell me I smell, but I don't know where. Like that, all that stuff is like, she's a fantastic voice actor. Another thing is that I've never been so tricked by an anime opening ever since Gakko Kurashi, as I guess the other exception, which is like a show that really tricked me with its opening. This is another one too, where the opening of the first episode, like the OP, sorry, it has like very like happy visuals, and basically what you see is that you have Marina and Shizuka, and they're like initially fighting, but they get brought together by the friendship ribbon. And then later on in the episode, when Takopi reveals the friendship ribbon, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. So the story is going to be that like Shizuka and Marina use this friendship, or Shizuka, sorry, uses this friendship ribbon on Marina to kind of brainwash her into becoming a friend. And the point of the story is going to be something like, oh, you can't force people to be your friends. They have to like naturally become your friends or something. But that's not at all what happens. And she ends up using the ribbon to commit suicide. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I really got to see by the opening, and I like it a lot. Also, the opening is really fantastic. So what can I say? Every production element of this is fantastic. So, just expect that I would say about anything in this. But anyway, at the end of episode 2, when they dropped the big Takopi's original sin like frame, like the text behind Takopi and Shizuka when they're walking away in the fray, that was really cool. I like that. Holding Takopi's hand as like a visual, what do you call it, motif, is really cool. Where like in the first part, the first time you see it is when you have Shizuka celebrating the fact that Takopi killed Marina, and they like kind of grab each other's hand as like an acceptance of like, yes, murder, we love it, good job. And then you see it again in the final episode where they're like holding their hands, but this time it's more of a like, I'm here for you. Like killing Marina was not the solution. What's really the solution is like for me being here to talk to you, So yeah, that was really cool. I like it's like a cute character quirk, like a very small thing, which is that Shizuka likes bugs. You don't need to have this in this story. It's not relevant. Like there's no thing where it's like, oh, bugs are like really important. But it's cute. She's like sees a little grasshopper and she's like, oh, look how cool it is. And she's like a little net to like catch bugs. And I like it. It's like a little cute little character detail, There's the really cool scene where Shizuka goes to visit her dad, and we from our audience's perspective, we see her as very clean and pristine and very like happy and excited. But in reality, when we see Shizuka from the dad's perspective or from the narrative's perspective, like the world of the story, she's very dirty and depressed and like clearly like homeless and stuff like that, And it's just so sad, and I really like it. Really cool. We get one of the most incredible shots in this is in episode 5, when you have Marina being like abused by her mother in her house, and then you go and see Azuma and Shizuka, and they're sitting on the I think it's like a wooden, like a log or something, and the sunset or the sunrise or sunset something, the sun is basically panning around them, and like the rays of light are like scattering past their heads, and it's like casting a shadow, but also doing like the blooming effect. I don't know what you call it. It just looks so good. I've never seen animation like that. It looks so good. That was really cool. In the final episode, there's this incredibly like cute but like incredibly sad kind of, it's more cute than sad, but it is also sad thing that happens, which is that Shizuka's obviously this is when she's like walking around crying, and we're getting a compilation with an insert song, and she's like holding Takopi's hand, and who knows how long she's been away for. She opens up her travel book for like when her and Azuma were like planning to go to Tokyo, and she has like a little coin inside. It's like a single $5 coin, or like 500 yen coin. And it says, use only when you're in serious trouble. It's like so sad because it's like she is in serious trouble, but also it's like a thing a kid would think of, like $5 is like going to get you by. It's cute and sad at the same time, and I love it. And my final miscellaneous note for the great Takopi's Original Sin is that the title of the show is obviously Takopi's Original Sin. And when they go to Planet Happy, there's like trees, and the first visual you see is like one of the Takopi alien things grabbing like an apple from the tree, and very clearly like Planet Happy is meant to be the Garden of Eden, and Takopi was obviously cast out for like picking the fruit of the happy tree or something like that. I don't know. I'd have to think more about like the symbolism there, but it's very clear like that's what they're referencing, and I like it. I don't know. I feel like I barely talked about this show. There's like so much to talk about how great this is. It is unironically, it is very, very likely my favorite anime of all time. I don't know. Maybe one day I'll do like a proper like scripted review, or like maybe I'll just talk about this more, rewatch it, you know, make more of these scripted videos. I don't know what to say. If you haven't seen this, what are you doing? Go watch Takopi's Original Sin. Then afterwards read the manga, you know, if you're interested. But this is a story where the story is fantastic, the production is fantastic, the animation, of course, like the music, everything, the characters. Like, I'm gonna remember this forever. I cried, I laughed, I appreciated just looking at the visuals. I'm so glad this story exists. But that's it. Takopi's Original Sin. And that's it for this month's digest, actually. When I say this month, I mean part 1 of the 3-month digest that I'm doing here. So let's look at the rankings. So, you know, in 38, we got Squid Game, Season 3, in the 2 out of 5s. Then we got Before the Coffee Gets Cold in the 3 out of 5s, followed by The Hollow, and then Ritual at the top of the 3 out of 5s. Then we got Love and Pop out in the 4 out of 5s. Then we got Project Zomboid right above it. Then we got A Sign of Affection way up in number 15, followed by Encanto in number 12. And then all the way in number 2, we've got Vinland Saga, one of my favorite stories of all time. And then in number 1 this year, which is going to be very, very hard to top. I don't know how. Maybe the Chainsaw Man movie could do it if it's like perfect, but we'll see. Takopi's Original Sin, one of my favorite, probably my favorite anime of all time. So yeah, see you next month. Wait, actually, probably not next month. Probably like really soon. I don't know how many days or how many, like if it'll be tomorrow or something, but don't worry, they're coming soon. Okay, the next digest is coming.